Sister called CPS on us behind my back, threatening our family and shaking my trust, and now I must confront her betrayal. My sister and I have always been incredibly close. Every year, she spends Christmas Eve at my house with her fiancé, he's 31, and helps us play Santa's helper, staying up late, building toys, laughing, creating a little magic for Christmas morning. It's a tradition I cherish. This past Christmas, she was there as usual. That night, though, she witnessed my husband and my father disciplining our 13-year-old son. He's entered those classic stubborn teenage years, ignoring tasks, feigning confusion over simple things, slamming doors, and delivering a steady stream of sass. It isn't just at home, his teachers have started noticing the same behavior, so my husband and I are trying to guide him gently but firmly toward better choices. Our style falls somewhere between tough love and heartfelt conversation. Whenever my son explodes during a disagreement, his usual play is to argue, get worked up, and then storm upstairs to slam his bedroom door. My husband always waits 10 minutes before going to talk. Without fail, it turns into one of those meaningful heart-to-hearts, even if it's tough at first. On Christmas Eve, our son told his 3-year-old sister that Santa isn't real. Both my husband and I jumped on it, reminding him that wasn't okay. True to form, he got defensive, argued, stormed off. My sister and her fiancé were there for all of it, though they didn't say a word, just helped us stay on track with the Christmas Eve routine. Our son apologized later and went to bed. The night felt resolved. Then, once school started up again, everything exploded. A few days after winter break, a CPS worker pulled my son out of class and interviewed him about how we treated him at home. He told her he loved us, yes, sometimes we ground him or take away his electronics for a week, yes, sometimes he argues, but he knows we discipline him because we love him and want him to learn. He said everything at home is fine. December had already been one of the hardest months of my life. I have a seizure disorder that had been dormant for a decade, and suddenly, out of nowhere, I had 3 back-to-back seizures. I was sitting in my neurologist's office, exhausted, prepping for a sleep-deprived Eve when that social worker called and left a voicemail. She'd be visiting our house the next day, to talk to us and our little girl. I sent the voicemail to my husband and asked him to call her back, since I couldn't manage it myself. The next day, after all the medical tests, the CPS worker arrived. That was when we finally heard what the accusations were. First, that my husband was an alcoholic with anger issues. Second, that we were starving our 3 kids and had no food in the house. For the first accusation, it was Christmas Eve. Our whole family was there, celebrating with some eggnog and wine, but nobody overdid it except my sister, who polished off an 18-pack of beer by herself. There is absolutely no drinking problem in this house, and my husband's never had anger issues. He and my dad were upset at our son's behavior, yes, but nothing close to what was accused. As for the second accusation, the CPS worker toured our pantry, fridge, and freezer and actually laughed, saying, "There's enough food here to feed everyone in this house for 3 months. Starving our kids?" That allegation was so far from reality it was almost comical. After she finished and was preparing to go, she said, "I'm grateful to be handling a case in a functional home with happy, healthy kids. Usually, it's quite the opposite. Today, she called to say the case would be closed by end of day. She saw no reason for further action. But the damage was done. Talking with my parents and brother, we all came to the same conclusion: this had to be my sister. None of us could believe it, but it fit everything we knew, especially given the way she behaved. She hasn't flat out admitted it, but she hinted enough when talking to each of us separately. That day, when the CPS interview happened, she was blowing up my phone, demanding updates and wanting all the details. The second she heard it had gone fine, she fell silent. 4 weeks. No contact at all. This was the last thing my family needed. With my health struggles and our lives turned upside down, I can't drive for 6 months, so I can't work or manage my usual routines. I feel absolutely betrayed. My husband and I both do. I keep replaying it. A family member I've trusted implicitly, someone I considered a best friend, made such a reckless, dishonest, and frankly cruel decision. I've spent weeks wrestling with how to confront her. She hasn't fully owned up, but she's made it clear enough. I want to talk to her. I want her to know that what she did was wrong on every level. She put my children at risk with her baseless accusations. I want her to know she's not welcome at my son's birthday next week, and that she will not be welcome here for a long time. I know that she knows I suspect her, and I'm torn between wanting to scream and wanting to just go completely no contact for a while. The saddest part is that she's been growing more unstable over the years, and it feels like I've lost my sister for good. I don't know if she can ever come back from this, and not without a lot of change and hard work on her end. Not anytime soon. My parents haven't gone after her yet. They've been trying to get information out of her, since she shut down on me. But I'm preparing myself for a long break, no calls, no texts, no visits, nothing. Not after what she's done. The reality is, she crossed a line you can't uncross. What hurts the most is feeling like I lost my sister, and she doesn't even seem to care. That night was a whirlwind of accusations and outright lies. My sister, the ultimate granola health food fanatic, seems to have told people we weren't feeding our kids when in reality, our house is overflowing with food. The difference? She's obsessed with everything organic, nothing processed, no chips, no snacks. In her eyes, kids should be eating salads and vegan meals. When she peeped into our pantry, her strict beliefs must have translated into the absurd accusation that we're starving our kids just because our food doesn't fit her standards. I even remember her boyfriend looking around and, rather condescendingly, saying, "Wow, you guys have a lot of spaghetti sauce, do you ever worry about the GMOS?" The nerve. I cook dinner for my kids every single night. We never order takeout. The meals I serve are always home cooked. Sure, sometimes I grab a jar of pasta sauce to make things easier when I'm whipping up spaghetti or baked ziti, and yes, we have canned goods, beans, soups, rice, pasta noodles. Apparently, those items are beneath her, but that's how my kids have always eaten and they're happy and healthy. People have asked me if I'm absolutely sure it wasn't her fiancé who made the call. Apparently, it would be wise to sit both of them down for a conversation, because it's almost certain it came from someone in that circle. But I know deep down, it wasn't my son acting out or making some mistake when he came home. He immediately told my husband about some lady speaking to him at school, and he was genuinely confused by it. I trust him entirely. There's another layer to this. Her fiancé is a social worker, so it's possible she used his access or knowledge to orchestrate this, but honestly, during their visits, he was more interested in flirting with my youngest sister than anything else. As for what's actually going on between all of them, I haven't the faintest idea. What stings them most is that my sister can't have children herself. She's always been the one in our family longing for a big, bustling house full of kids. That alone feels like a motive swirling with rage. If CPS had actually taken my kids, it's not a wild assumption that she'd want to be first in line to take them in before they went to foster care. This is a massive betrayal. To think that she'd project her personal issues and jealousy onto me and my family and then act on it cuts deep. When someone you trust makes false accusations like this, you suddenly see them differently. She's no longer my sister, she's a direct threat to my family's safety. I have no choice now but to protect my husband, my children, and myself above all else, even if that means completely cutting her out of our lives. Update 1. My brother wants us to coordinate a lunch where we'd all sit down together to discuss this face to face. He doesn't think it's a good idea for me to just text her about everything, which I understand, but honestly, I'm not even sure if I can look her in the eye right now. Still, I intend to bring up her drinking issues and my concerns for her mental health during the conversation, but I also need to get to the truth. There's a lot swirling in my head about what's really happening, and I'm determined to talk about it all, even if it's uncomfortable. Update 2. She ended up reaching out to me and told me how much she loved me. My heart was pounding, but I needed clarity, so I told her that I had a question and I needed her to be honest with me. She called me immediately, no hesitation, not even a pause. And then, without missing a beat, she opened with, "I think you already know the answer if you're asking this question, so yes, it was me." The floor seemed to fall away beneath me. I followed up, my voice shaking, asking her, "Do you realize what could have happened to my kids? To me and my husband? Do you realize how bad the outcome of this could have been?" But before I could even finish, she erupted. She started ranting and yelling, hurling cruel words that my husband and I don't deserve to be parents, that I obviously don't care about my kids because I hadn't even brought them up, despite the fact that my very first question had been about my children. The irony nearly knocked the breath out of me. From her voice, the way her words slurred and tumbled, I'd bet she was drunk again during this call. She wouldn't let me speak, just kept ramping up, yelling over every attempt I made to get a word in. I tried so many times to ask if I could speak, but she just kept going, furious and incomprehensible. The only words she seemed to hear from me were, "You realize we are going to be taking a very long break from you, right?" And all she could muster, cold and detached, was, "I'm sure you will, and I don't care." And then she spiraled right back into her tirade. Finally, I told her as calmly as I could that if she wasn't going to let me speak, I was going to hang up. She continued ranting, now incoherent, saying something about how she cares more about my kids than anyone ever has, clearly ignoring the reality of her actions. If she truly cared, how could she possibly think putting my children at risk, and causing them to lose a family member over her choices, was showing love? Again, I was left with no choice. I calmly told her that if she wouldn't stop and allow me a voice in this conversation, I would have to end it. She didn't stop. That's where the call ended. I hung up, blocked her immediately, and then my hand shaking called our father. I told him exactly how she had been acting on the phone, that she sounded completely unstable, either drunk, in the middle of a manic episode, or probably both. I asked him to call her, hoping maybe he could somehow calm her down or reach her in a way I couldn't. He sounded like he would, but honestly, I don't know if it made any difference. The devastation I felt was instant and suffocating. Somewhere deep down, I'd always known it was her, but I had wanted, desperately, for there to be a slim impossible chance it was someone else. Hearing her admit it out loud, the way she said it so indignant, almost proud, sent chills right down my spine. Then she dissolved into the completely unhinged ranting. Last night, I officially lost my sister. From here on out, I'm going no contact. My heart is shattered. When I spoke to my dad, his entire demeanor changed the moment I told him she'd admitted it. He sounded like he was on the verge of tears, and honestly, I don't blame him. She tore a massive rift in our family. There were so many things I never even got to bring up during that phone call, like where in the world she got the idea that we're starving our kids, that we have no food in the house. She's never once left our home hungry, and my children have never gone without. I wanted an answer, but she never let me say a word. I also wanted to call out the irony of her accusing my husband of drunk, angry outbursts, while she was clearly the one falling apart in that exact way right there on the phone. This is the end of the road for me. I have no idea how to truly feel today except utterly heartbroken and numb. I'm worried, honestly, that her response last night could mean she'll try to retaliate in some way. I hope my dad was able to talk some sense into her, but I just don't know. For now, I'm on edge, sad, and hoping, somehow, to move forward from this in peace. Update 3. I had just settled into that weird, exhausted quiet that comes after crying yourself empty when the doorbell started buzzing like an alarm. It was 1:14 a.m. My husband and I both shot out of bed, and when I looked through the peephole there were 2 officers on the porch, shoulders turned, flashlights hanging low. I opened the door in my robe and the taller one gave me this apologetic look as soon as he saw the baby gate and 2 stockings still taped to the banister because I haven't had the energy to take them down. "Ma'am, we got a call for a welfare check. Report said there was screaming, violence in the home, and no food for the kids." I could feel my heartbeat jump into my throat. He kept his voice soft. "Are the children here? Is everyone okay?" Our 3-year-old had padded out by then in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes, and my husband picked her up. The officer's whole posture changed. He asked if he could just have a quick look. Pantry, bedrooms. The kids and I watched him try not to roll his eyes when he opened the pantry and saw our mountain of spaghetti sauce gleaming back at him like a joke from the universe. I don't know why it made me want to laugh and cry at the same time, but it did. He said, "I'm sorry to have to bother you at this hour," and gave us an incident number and said if anything like this kept happening, to document it. He didn't have to say the rest. There's a particular kind of pity that comes from people who have seen too much, and I saw it flash over his face when he realized what this was. I didn't sleep. My daughter finally fell back asleep on my chest, heartbeat syncopated with mine, and the dark stretched all the way into morning like taffy. At 7:02 a.m. my dad called and said, "He wants to talk to you." I could hear someone else breathing on the line. Then my sister's fiancé got on. His voice was raspy, tentative, too careful. "I'm not calling to defend her," he started, and then he did anyway. He said she hasn't been sleeping, that she's been drinking straight through entire nights, that she keeps swinging from sobbing to this smug righteousness. He said he told her not to call CPS. He said he didn't make that first call. Then he said he was the one who dialed the welfare check last night from his work phone because she was going to do it anyway, and he thought if he controlled what was said, it wouldn't blow up. He kept saying, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I thought I was minimizing harm. I think there was a part of him that believed that. The worst part was when he admitted she'd asked him weeks ago how Anonymous really worked, what numbers show up on internal logs, whether employees are ever flagged. He paused too long before saying he didn't know if she used his login at any point. "They put me on leave this morning," he added, almost like it was a footnote, and then his voice cracked and he whispered, "She's blaming you for that." I could feel this cold calm settle in me. I asked him, very clearly, if he had copies of any messages where she talked about reporting us. He did. He emailed them. There they were, screen captured, timestamped, her words like little lit matches. "Maybe if they come twice they'll finally see. You know processed food is abuse, right? If they take them, they'll call me. Blood goes first. And then, from last night, do it. Use your county phone. They take it seriously. I forwarded the email to myself, to my husband, to a folder labeled Keep. I was standing at the courthouse under fluorescent lights that made everyone look ill. I didn't want to do it. I did it anyway. I signed my name over and over until the loops of my letter started to look like someone else's. The clerk didn't blink when I said, harassment and malicious reporting out loud. She stamped the papers with this heavy thunk that felt like a door locking. I walked out into brittle winter sun with a temporary order in my purse and my hands shaking so hard I had to sit on the stone planter and count to 30 just to get my breath back. My husband squeezed my knee and said, "You did the right thing. I don't know that right and wrong exist in a clean line anymore, but I know I chose the safety of my kids over the graveyard of our history." My son's birthday was the next day. We kept it simple: pizza from scratch, a projector in the backyard, him and 3 friends bundled under blankets pretending the cold didn't bother them while some ridiculous action movie exploded on the garage door. He laughed. I hadn't heard him laugh like that in weeks, maybe months. There was a brief hiccup when a florist van pulled up and a kid hopped out with a vase the size of our 3-year-old. The card said, "For my babies. Eat your veggies." Hey. I didn't even let the kid's shoes hit the porch. I told him, kindly, to please take it back. My son looked at me like he was bracing for an explosion, and when none came, his whole body unclenched. We sang, and he let me kiss the top of his head without a single eye roll. I was absurdly grateful for the tiny grace. At midnight, my father called again. He never calls me that late unless something is wrong. His voice sounded like gravel. He said they'd had to call an ambulance for my sister. She'd shown up at their house in the same clothes as the night before, mascara smeared, half-empty bottle in her hand, alternating between begging them to just listen and screaming that we'd stolen her family. She threw the bottle against the tile. It shattered. My mother slipped trying to clean it and my dad said that's when he dialed. The paramedics came. She tried to hate the EMT when they told her she needed to be seen. They took her in for a psych evaluation on hold. He said he'd never seen her eyes like that. He said the words, "I don't know my own child," and then he went quiet, and I could hear him trying not to cry. I sat on the floor of my bathroom with my back against the tub so the kids wouldn't hear me and stared at a toothpaste stain on the tile while the seconds ticked. Grief is such a stupid, ugly thing. It doesn't even have the decency to arrive all at once. It trickles. I cried for who she was before this, for who I thought she still was, and for who she has chosen to be now. This morning I woke up to a new email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, "The truth." It was her. It read like a manifesto, pages of all the way she believes I am failing, that society is failing, that the definition of harm is whatever she decides it is. She called the restraining order theatrics. She called my son brainwashed by sugar and said that if I won't mother, someone has to. It wasn't an apology. It was a threat dressed up as righteousness. I didn't respond. I sent it to the officer who gave me his card last night and to the courthouse email the clerk scribbled on a post-it for me. I blocked that address, too. My dad texted from the parking lot of the hospital around noon, "She's sleeping. They're keeping her for observation." He added, "I told them I'm afraid she'll keep making calls." The nurse apparently nodded in that way that doesn't promise anything but says, "We hear you." I don't know what will happen when she's discharged. I don't know what happens to the fiancé job. I don't know if she will try to set fire to my life again or if this was the fire burning itself out. What I do know is that I locked our back gate this afternoon and my husband put a new coat on the garage and my son asked me if we could make the baked ziti with a good jarred sauce and I said, "Yes, baby, of course," and he smiled at me like he was relieved we were still ourselves. Update 4. Courtrooms at 8:30 a.m. are the color of old oatmeal and smell faintly like dry paper. I sat on a hard bench with a file folder in my lap so thick it made my fingers ache. Screenshots, the welfare check incident number, the email with the truth in the subject line, printed and stapled like I could pin the madness down with office supplies. My husband squeezed my shoulder. My dad sat on my other side, palms flat on his knees like he was trying to stop an earthquake. Across the aisle, her fiancé paced a slow, sick triangle between the water fountain and the exit sign. No ring. No county badge. His eyes found mine once and flinched away. She came in late. Hair scraped back, a spiral notebook hugged to her chest bulging with torn out articles, food charts, photos of my pantry blown up and printed grainy from some holiday years ago. She wouldn't look at me. When they called my name, she stood up too fast and the notebook slipped, raining paper down on the carpet like confetti from a parade nobody asked for. The judge had that weary patience I've only ever seen on people used to sorting flame from smoke. I raised my right hand and told the truth. I did not tell the judge how my son sounds when he laughs in the cold. I did not tell all her about the spaghetti sauce. I stuck to the beats, the bruise, the calls, the late-night doorbell, the screen captures, the threat dressed as righteousness. The clerk stacked my exhibits carefully, square and neat. When it was her turn, she tried to open with processed food as neglect, like it was a legal term that could stand up on its own two legs. The judge lifted a hand. "Ma'am, no editorializing. Facts only." She kept going. "If you'd just let me mother them." The bailiff said her name, soft, but shaped like a stop sign. She pivoted to the welfare checks, to anonymous, to they should know better, and my stomach did a small, awful spin when she said, clear as daylight, I would do it again. There was a sound behind me, like air leaving a room all at once, and I realized it was my father. Her fiancé stood when the judge asked if anyone else had direct information. He cleared his throat 4 times. He said words that sounded like sandpaper, that he'd warned her, that she'd asked about internal logs, that he'd made a terrible choice trying to control harm. He said he'd turned over his phone to his supervisor and that he was on unpaid leave. He said he'd ended their engagement yesterday because he couldn't keep walking a line that didn't exist. He didn't look at her. She stared at the table like she could punch holes and it was just her eyes. The judge didn't take long. She spoke in straight lines. The order is extended for 2 years. No contact with me or my household, no third-party messages, no gifts on the porch disguised as produce. Stay 100 yards from our home, from the kids' schools, from my work if I get to go back. Surrender of any firearms if there are any. A notation will be made with dispatch that there is an ongoing pattern of malicious reporting tied to our address. Welfare checks will be logged and reviewed by a supervisor. If there are violations, we should report them. She said your children's stability is paramount and underlined it with her voice in a way that made my throat go tight. We stepped into the hallway and the noise of 20 other lives washed over us, heels clicking, a baby hiccuping, a copy machine complaining. She brushed past me, close enough that I caught the sharp note of stale vodka and wonder peppermint gum. "Monster," she hissed without moving her lips. It was quiet enough that only I heard it. The bailiff shadowed her all the way to the elevator. The doors closed. I watched the numbers tick down like a countdown I hadn't asked for. By lunch, the CPS worker from the first visit left a voicemail. She'd received the court order from the clerk. She said she couldn't discuss the reporter, but that duplicate reports with no new information can be screened out, and that a memo had been placed in the file noting verified harassment. "If there are genuine safety issues, we will always come," she said, "but I want you to hear me say that your case was closed as unfounded. That remains true." The way her voice landed on that last word felt like a hand at the small of my back, steadying me mid-step. At 4:17 p.m. My phone lit up with our doorbell camera. The screen showed a bright winter rectangle of porch and just a hand reaching into the frame to tuck a brown paper bag next to the mat. The bag had sharp corners and a note taped messily to the side, "Liquids, not sauces. Do better." I didn't open the door. I didn't touch the bag. My husband called non-emergency. The same officer from the night with the flashlights came. He stood on the porch, hands on his belt, looking tired and kind. He took a photo, then slid the bag gingerly into a plastic tub like it was evidence because it was. When he turned the note over with his pen, there was a second one underneath addressed to my son by name, with a heart drawn next to it. The officer didn't say anything out loud, but his jaw tightened. He said, "This qualifies," and radioed it in. An hour later, my neighbor texted me a clip from her camera. My sister's car angled half up the curb, headlight coughing, her silhouette darting from the driver's side to our walkway and back again with that bag. I sent the clip to the officer. I forwarded it to the courthouse email on the post-it. The inside of my chest felt like a cold room you can't get warm in, no matter how many sweaters you stack. At 6:52 a.m., my father showed up on our doorstep with 2 mugs in his fists and a folder I recognized from their kitchen, the one my mother uses for warranty cards and appliance manuals. He put it on the table and sat like he was twice his age. "They discharged her this afternoon," he said. "Outpatient, medication, follow up in a week if she agrees." He didn't say whether she'd agreed. He slid the folder across to me. Inside were copies of forms he and my mother had signed at the hospital, their own restraining order paperwork, half filled and waiting, their shaky signatures spidering across all the places your hand cramps. He had printed photos of me and her as kids matching Christmas pajamas, grass-stained knees, faces open and sunburned. "I thought if you kept these," he said, "you wouldn't have to look at them at our house." He tried to smile and failed. I went around the table and put my arms around his shoulders. He cried in 3 sharp inhales and then stopped like he was embarrassed by the sound of it. Sometime after dark, the fiancé sent me one last message. It was a photo of a ring on a paper napkin with a check from a coffee shop underneath. I told her I'd leave at your parents so she wouldn't have a reason to come by, he wrote. I've told my board everything. I don't know if it saves my job. I am sorry. He added, they will probably call you for a statement. My thumb hovered over the keyboard and then I put the phone face down and went to stir the sauce that was doing that lazy bubble in the pot. At 9:03 a.m., my son wandered into the kitchen with his hair sticking up from a hoodie and said, "You good?" in that half-joke teens use to test the air. I said, "I'm here," and he leaned his hip against the counter like he was unsure if he should hug me or crack another joke. My daughter was building a tower out of block magnets on the refrigerator door like she was trying to invent a new kind of skyscraper. She looked at me very seriously and said, "No more porch presents unless it's Halloween." I laughed so hard I startled myself. I thought that was all the night had in it. At 11:19 at m.p.m. Headlights fanned wide across our front windows and then clicked off. The doorbell didn't ring. The cameras didn't ping. There was a long beat of silence where all I could hear was a refrigerator motor and the metronome of my own breath. Then a soft chime from my email. A delivery confirmation from a grocery service I don't use, addressed to the alley gate, order name, Annie. The note to the driver read, "Leave by back fence, kids will get it in the morning." My husband and I walked out with the officer's words still floating in the air, our shoes loud on the pavement. There were 6 glass bottles of green juice sweating in the cold and a paper bag with a printed flyer inside about clean eating for families, circled aggressively in pink highlighter. I didn't feel anything for a full minute. Then I felt all of it at once. I took another deep breath that didn't go all the way down, and we did what the judge told us to do. We documented. We called. The patrol car rolled past our house slow as a lullaby and stopped at the mouth of the alley. The officer stepped out, looked at the bottles, looked up at the camera tucked under the eaves, and then at me. "We'll handle it," he said, and something in me finally let go enough that I could nod without shaking. After midnight, the house held itself very still. My husband fell asleep with a hand on our daughter's foot to keep from getting up 100 times to check locks we already checked. My son texted me a meme of a superhero punching a jar of marinara and I snorted in the dark like a teenager. I lay on my back and stared at the soft glow of the smoke detector and thought about how grief and relief can sit side by side like two people who don't like each other on either end of a couch. My EEG results had come in by email earlier, a line of jargon I read 3 times and finally understood to mean my seizures are likely stress triggered and the new medication is doing its job. I could feel the medicine moving through me, cottoning the edges of my thoughts just enough to keep me from running in circles. In the morning, my son asked if we could walk to school instead of drive because the air was crisp in a good way. We walked. The sun was the pale yellow of a sticky note and our breath made little ghosts. At the corner, he slipped his hand into mine for half a block and then let go like it was a secret. I watched him disappear through the doors, slouchy and tall, backpack hanging wrong, and I thought, this is the only thing that matters. At home, there was an email from the detective's office asking for times, clips, details. I answered every question like I was folding a fitted sheet, awkward, determined, doing my best. I don't know what shape tomorrow will take. I do know there's a bright orange note taped inside our front door now at my eye level, a list of the people who live here, the names of people who are allowed to pick up our kids, the password we give the school, the officer's card clipped on with a chit bag clamp. It looks ridiculous and exactly right. Tonight, we'll make garlic bread. I will leave the jar on the counter like a dare and pour the sauce over noodles while my daughter counts out loud to 27 just because she likes the way that number feels in her mouth. When the timer dings, I will take the pan out of the oven and try not to imagine the sound as anything but dinner being ready. And if the doorbell rings, we are not alone anymore with that sound. Update 5. The phone rang at 9:06 am. The school's number bright and official on the screen, and for a second my stomach did that elevator drop I can't seem to train out of myself. The secretary's voice was clipped in the way people get when they're trying to make a script sound gentle. "He's fine," she said first, and my ribs unlocked a little. "We have a woman here trying to check him out early." She identified herself as his aunt. I could hear hallway noise in the background, lockers humming, a teacher laughing too loud down the way, and then the secretary again, lower now. She doesn't have the password. She guessed 3 times. Clean, organic, and angel. Our SRO is with her in the office. I said the words I didn't think I'd ever say out loud into a phone like that. "There's a protective order." The SRO took the line. He asked for the incident number from the welfare check and the court order details like he was pulling together a puzzle I'd left scattered on a coffee table. "We're going to ask her to leave. Do not come down here," he said, like he was pressing a hand flat over the panic trying to crawl up my throat. I didn't go. I watched the little dot that is my son move across the Find My map from algebra to science like I could keep him safe with my fingertips. The SRO called me back 10 minutes later. She's gone. Said she was dropping off a nutrition packet for the nurse. We have it. He paused. Ma'am, it had your son's name spelled wrong and a heart next to it. He sounded tired. I said thank you and hung up and went and stood very still in the laundry room and listened to the dryer click like a metronome until my pulse stopped trying to sprint. The detective called at 11 and at 03 a.m. He wanted me to email the copy of the order again so he could staple it to the new report and walk it straight to the DA's desk. Showing up on school grounds falls under your order as a violation, he said. We'll request a warrant for a violation of a protection order and criminal trespass if the school wants to press. He said it the way people say sunset is at 5:40 tonight, and I didn't know whether to be grateful or furious or both. At noon, my father texted me she was here with a photo of his welcome mat strewn with glass from where my mother had knocked over the empty bottles that had been lined up like a museum exhibit. The bone broth parade, 3 in a row, caps off, the tops dusted with pepper like she'd blessed them. They were at the courthouse when she came, the neighbor called them, and they sent the neighbor my way in the video the neighbor took to the detective before I even had to ask. My mother left a voicemail, for me I didn't listen to until bedtime. In it, she is breathing hard and saying, "We've signed ours. It's filed. Your father is getting new locks." The board for his job called in the afternoon. They wanted verification of dates and times from me and I gave them what I had, nothing more. I felt like I was holding a match over someone else's bridge and I hated it even while I knew it isn't me who built it on Tinder. He sent me a one sentence at TÜV, already MP. They terminated me. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like sitting down too hard on a chair you didn't realize was missing one leg. They picked her up at 5:18 a.m., not at our door, not at my parents in the co-op parking lot while she was unloading a trunk heavy with grocery tote bags in fury. That's how the detective described it. She didn't fight, he said. She started talking about the children and the state of the American lunchroom. We didn't engage. He told me she'd be held for first appearance in the morning. Protective order violation. Conditions likely to include compliance with mental health recommendations. Documented pattern, he said, and I could hear papers sliding into a file somewhere, a weight settling. My son walked home with a friend who pretends he doesn't like us and then sits at our table for an hour talking about video game lore so intense I might need a graduate seminar. He leaned on the counter and said, "If a person tried to pick me up that was on the list, do they, put spikes out onto their car?" I laughed harder than the joke deserved because it felt good to be on the safe, silly side of a line for once. I told him about passwords and SROs, and how boring safety is supposed to look. He nodded like he was filing it away between guitar tabs and quadratic equations. The arraignment was this morning. 8:31 am. The same oatmeal walls, different judge with a voice, like a door that shuts and latches. I didn't have to speak. The prosecutor read the chain in that unemotional cadence that makes you feel like you dreamed it all. 3 reports, 1 welfare check at 1:14 a.m. An alley delivery to the back gate, a school office visit, a brown bag with sharp edges and a note that tried to make a joke out of a threat. They show the neighbor's clip. They show the grocery receipt with Auntie in all caps and a smiley face that looked like a sneer. Her public defender put a hand on her arm when she opened her mouth to say, "If you just let me," and shook his head minutely. Bail set. Conditions: no alcohol, compliance with outpatient treatment, electronic monitoring, all the distances from all the places written out in a way that sounded like fences you can't see but can absolutely feel. "This is not a debate about food," the judge said at the end, looking right at her. "This is about boundaries you are refusing to acknowledge." When we walked back into the strip of winter light, my dad's breath made 3 small clouds and then disappeared. He didn't say anything. He handed me a Ziploc bag with 2 old Polaroids. I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't have room for on the fridge right now. I put them in my purse like a promise to try later. The school counselor called me after lunch and asked if my son would like to see her just for a check-in. He came home with a pass and a lollipop in his pocket like he was 9 again, shrugged when I asked how it went, then said, "She has a tiny sand garden on her desk and I wasn't allowed to draw a dragon in it." He grinned and I felt something unknot in my chest an inch. After dinner, the doorbell didn't ring. The cameras pinged only for the mail guy and a cat that has decided our front step is his kingdom at twilight. My daughter made a crown out of aluminum foil and declared herself queen of noodles. I left the jar on the counter like a little red lighthouse and we passed plates down the line, sauce and steam and the quiet miracle of nothing in the air but garlic. The detective's email, at my inbox at 9:22 p.m. He'd attached a scan page with the box checked next to notify school district. There was a note in the margin in someone else's handwriting: hold at front office if appears, call SRO. The school has the order on file now. So does his pediatrician, so does the camp he goes to in the summer. I printed one extra copy and slid it behind an Aranara on the second shelf of the pantry because the absurdity of that would have made my sister gnash her teeth, and the thought of it made me laugh for the first time all day. My neurologist called, too. Your EE looks quieter, she said. Your brain likes gentle. More of that. I stood at the sink and watched the backyard get swallowed by 6 o'clock like it does in winter and thought about how gentle isn't passive. It's guardrails and codes on the garage and a laminated password taped to the inside of the door at eye level. It's telling the people at the school that the ant with a notebook is not to come close. It's drawing a circle around my kids big enough for laughter but small enough to be safe. Tonight, my husband found the ornament she gave us 3 Christmases ago, 2 wooden reindeers tangled together with twine and a tag that says Santa's helpers. He held it up between 2 fingers, and we looked at it for a long beat. Then he set it back in the box and slid the lid shut and put the box on the top shelf of the hall closet behind the extra paper towels, like maybe that's where you keep the shape of a thing you can't use anymore but can't quite throw away.